Hey, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the worst books that I read in 2023. So this is not to say that these were terrible books, because I actually don't think I read anything that I absolutely despised this year as opposed to last year, but most of these, I think all of these, are 3-star reads, and they just happen to be my least favorite books I read this year. There are 10 of them, and so I'm going to share with you what books were not my favorite. They weren't terrible books. You might like them, but they were my least favorite. So first one is Broken Fae, which is part of the Ruthless Boys series. I gave this book 3 stars. Dark Fae I also gave 3 stars. But this book was just like the biggest letdown of all of the books. At this point, I felt like there should be more going on, and it just wasn't giving what I needed it to give at this point in the series. So it wasn't my favorite. I'm definitely going to finish this series, but I will say I've only read the first 4 books in Zodiac Academy, and I definitely think that it is a superior series. Maybe Ruthless Boys is just not for me, but also I feel like we've kind of just forgotten the whole plot line of the other things that are happening. Like the whole Gareth situation is kind of been thrown to the wind, and that is something I'm interested in pursuing, but they're not really pursuing it, and I don't know how it's all gonna wrap up in one book that's left, so this series has not really done it for me, especially Broken Fae. Next up is The Retreat, which I also gave 3 stars. Not that I hated this book. This is the sequel to The Sanatorium. It was actually a really quick read for me, and it wasn't bad. It just wasn't my favorite. I'm kind of over the whodunit thriller mysteries. I just figured them out too fast. So this is the second one where Detective Ellen Warner from the first book is coming to a island with a retreat because someone has died. More people keep dying, and she's trying to figure it out. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just 3 stars. So it was definitely not one of my favorites this year. Next up, and I know a lot of people like this book, is The Thursday Murder Club. I also gave this 3 stars. Parts of it just dragged. This was not the best mystery. I don't think I like mysteries that much. I like thrillers, but these kinds of, I don't know. I did really like the idea of it being in a senior citizen community, but I don't know. A lot of the parts of this just fell flat for me, and so it wasn't the best. It wasn't terrible. I definitely won't be continuing this series. I just didn't like it enough to read any of the other ones. I know that some people love this series. It wasn't my favorite. I just didn't really like it. Next up is The Bang Chronicles. Again, I gave it 3 stars. This is purely because I don't like novellas. I've decided I don't like novellas. I don't think any of this was really anything I needed. There was one short story that was the Malik short story. I enjoyed that one, but the rest of them I was like, this is information that I didn't need. You could have given it to me in any of the other series. It just felt like a waste of time. So I didn't enjoy this. It literally was a pain to get through. I had to force myself to sit down and finish it. So it wasn't good. Not fun. Along the same lines, another 3-star read that I just did not like, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. I think this was worse than The Bang Chronicles, and this gave some new information for me just because it's Simon post the Mortal Instruments. But it was so boring. I literally did not care what Simon was doing. Did not care at all. These novellas, again, I ended up, I think, audiobooking most of this because I just couldn't sit and read it. I think I audiobooked the whole thing, actually, because that was the only way for me to get through it. And even then, I just was not paying the best of attention because I just didn't care. This is how I learned that I'm not a novella girly. These stories, I don't need them. I did it because I had to, but I didn't need them. Next up is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Again, 3 stars. I have seen some questionable things about plagiarism regarding this author, and I know that the same tropes often are used within thrillers, and so a lot of times it's just plot devices. But that kind of rubbed me the wrong way after I read it. And it also wasn't my favorite. It was very easy to figure out what happened. I feel like it was not the best thriller I've read, especially because I read it right after Hidden Pictures. And even then, I was like, there's a lot of things that are similar that I'm just getting confused. I kept calling her a nanny, even though she wasn't a nanny, just because I had just read the hidden pictures, and so it wasn't my favorite, okay? I definitely expected more, and I feel like there are other books that are very similar that are probably better, so I didn't really love this one. Next up, and this might be a little controversial, The Fine Print. I gave it 3 stars. I read this for book club, and I don't know if any of us particularly loved it. I definitely continued with the rest of the series for my friend, and I did like Terms and Conditions probably the best. Final Offer wasn't bad, but this miscommunication trope was so awful that I struggled to get through it. Like, it was just absurd the way they were miscommunicating. Like, it was driving me insane. I hated it. This couple was not it for me. I liked the other ones. They weren't like my favorite books, but they were better than this. I gave them, I think, at least 4 stars. This one, I was like, this made me not want to read the other ones. So if you didn't like this one, definitely try to read the other ones, because I think that the other ones are better, and this, it's just this. The miscommunication trope. I literally just wanted to yell at her the entire time. So yeah, I didn't really like it. Next up is Believe Me, which is the last novella in the Shatter Me series. Again, I gave it 3 stars. I think this might be my least favorite thing I read this year. I just don't like epilogues like this, and this was basically just like a giant epilogue of mushy gushy. I just feel like it wasn't needed. Like, I know some people like live for that. Not I. Not I. I would rather imagine what their life is like afterwards than read about it. And this was just, I don't want to say much without spoiling it. I did not like this at all. And one of the Shatter Me books is on my top 10 books of the year. This one, just skip it, honestly, unless you like the lovey-dovey, tell me everything that happens after the fact kind of thing. Next up is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune, and House in the Cerulean Sea is one of my favorite books. I loved that book, so I had high expectations reading this, even though Under the Whispering Door wasn't my favorite either, but it was good when I read it last year. I think it was partly timing when I read this. I just wasn't in a place that I was like ready to read this story, I guess. So I gave it 3 stars. I like had to force myself to finish it. I do have a review where I kind of go in more like into more depth about why I didn't really like it. I do think that some people will love this book. And I think that I would have loved it if I had read it at a different time, like in a time that I was actually interested in reading it. But I just like couldn't get into it. And I felt like I had to force myself to read it, which made me not really like it that much. And then the last one is Road of Bones. Again, another 3 stars. This was a book that I randomly picked up, I think, because it was like buy one, get one 50, or it was like book club for Barnes & Noble, and I just grabbed it because I was choosing one from the stack. It wasn't terrible. It actually gave me Only Good Indians vibes, and I love the Only Good Indians, but it wasn't enough for me. I think I read it in one day. It's not that this is a bad book. It just wasn't my favorite book, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. So it's not bad. It's just not, I don't know, I wasn't like super sucked into it. I do think that The Only Good Indians is better if you want this same kind of vibes as literally this book gives. And I think also because I just didn't know anything about it, and I was just a random book I picked up, like I wasn't invested. So it might just be a me problem and not this book. You know what I mean? So those are my least favorite books that I read this year. I'm not saying that you won't love these books or that they're bad books. I think there are quite a few on this list that other people would read them and probably love them, and they might be some of their favorite books. Just not for me. They weren't for me. I'm really lucky to say that I haven't read anything this year that I hated, other than like Believe Me. I hated that. But like I didn't read any 2 stars or 1 stars. Like it was all 3 and up. So I feel like at least I got lucky there. So these are books that you still should probably maybe try to read. They just weren't for me, and they were the lowest on my list. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.